Welcome to the Adoption Journey podcast. I am your host, Tarsha Smith, and thank you once again for joining us and listening to these adoption stories. They've been amazing so far. If you are checking us out on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you are on Amazon or Spotify, make sure you give us a follow. And today in the building, we have a fellow adoptee, Tywin Calendike, and he is going to share his adoption story. Welcome, Tywin.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to just share a little bit of my journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So, what I love to do with everybody is start from the beginning. My first question is kind of tell us how you grew up and how old were you when you found out you were adopted?
Okay, so perfect. So for me, it was pretty obvious early on. So I was actually adopted by a Caucasian family, all Caucasians in the house. So
Oh,
found out pretty early
yeah.
that I was adopted. So and that's never been a secret, never something that was hidden from me or anything like that. They
So,
were
were
very
you
upfront.
adopted as an infant or were you a toddler? Or?
Yeah, so I actually was born into foster care from
Okay.
the get-go, and then pretty early on as an infant. So whenever I refer to my parents, it's my adopted family. That's what
Yeah,
I consider
absolutely.
my parents.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was actually placed with them pretty early on, um, yeah, pretty early on. However, at that time, white families could not adopt black kids. So the process was very long. So my mother actually had to march on the Capitol and fight for rights to be able to adopt me. So it was a very long process till it was finalized, but it started pretty early on.
Were you here in Florida or a different state?
No, this was actually I was born in Detroit, Michigan.
Ah, okay. So, what was life like growing up with a white family?
It was good. It was very good. I really honestly didn't know the difference. I've always been raised around all kind of ethnicities, black, white, Spanish, pretty much everything. My family did a really good job of keeping me engulfed in different type of cultures.
Okay.
Probably the least culture that I was around was the Caucasians. In some instances, it was only my family, my brothers and sisters, and my parents that were Caucasian. So it was good. It was a great experience. It wasn't till probably I hit maybe my teenage years. I started, I won't say the word resentment, but I started understanding I was a little bit different. So in my teens, I think I went through a little stage where I was like, yeah, not rebellious, not just I was different, you know. And I think a lot of teens go through that.
Sure.
But yeah, for me, it just kind of spawned into kind of thinking about like, man, you know, my family's white, I'm black, what's up with this? So
And
did go through a little bit that in my teens.
by the time you're a teenager, are you still in Detroit?
No, so we had moved quite a bit. So
Okay.
I was out of Detroit. So I was born in Detroit, but I did not grow up in Detroit.
Gotcha.
So I was out of Detroit at that time.
Okay. So, I know when we hit teenagers, we start going through puberty, that peer pressure. And when you say different, were you getting the type of peer pressure because you were raised in the white home or people were looking at you differently? Like, oh, what I hear a lot of people say, you're not black enough, you're not white enough. Is that the kind of
No, it wasn't even from that. It wasn't from an outside source.
got you?
It was me. It was everything was coming in from me. So on an
Okay.
exterior, it wasn't coming from anyone but me. It was just this was just a internal dialect that I had going on in myself.
All right.
But nothing outside that gave me that at all.
Okay. Now, are you biracial or do you know?
No, not biracial.
You're not biracial. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So we'll get there. So you grow up pretty normal like the rest of us. And so you know that you're adopted early on. Now, did you experience like a lot of adoptees wanting to know your where am I from? The whole birth parent thing or the biological side. Did you experience a lot of that growing up?
So growing up, again, my parents were pretty straightforward. Well, very straightforward. It was never a secret who my parents were. My father, he was just out of the picture. My biological father.
Okay.
But as far as who my mom was, that was never a secret.
Ah, okay.
I actually visited, especially when I was younger, pretty often with my grandma was heavily involved. She was around, so I would go on visits and I would see her on a pretty regular basis. As I got older, though, because again, I come from a family of 13, biologically 13 that I know of, just on my mom's side. So
Yeah.
as I got older, I did get the curiosity of, man, I wanted to know who my brothers and sisters were.
Yeah, absolutely. 13. Wow. So you come from, because you were born into the foster system, so this was an open adoption, what it
Yes.
sounds like to me.
Yep.
Okay, see, mine was closed, totally different experience. So, just for our viewers, what is that like being able to not only be around growing up, being around and I'm just going to say adopted family. I know we don't say that, but
Yep.
your adoptive family and your birth family. Is it confusion or is it just normal? Like, do you think everybody else is growing up like this?
No, so I knew it wasn't normal. I would say for me, it actually cut down on confusion. So again, I don't know what it's like not to know, but I
Mm,
think if I didn't know, it would have created a ton of confusion and curiosity. What's that curiosity? I mean, I knew who my biological mom was. I knew her backstory. So there was no confusion as far as that went. So I think for me, it was pretty much cut and dry. It answered a lot of questions that I probably would have had at some point later on in life. 100%.
so, if you don't mind, can you share what your mom's backstory was? How
Yeah,
did we
yeah,
get
absolutely.
here? Okay.
So, my mom, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I'm at now of how I feel about her. I would say our relationship, but we don't have a relationship. But
Mm,
my mindset has definitely changed. So, anyways, so my mom, my biological mom, she was a drug addict. She also, and that, like a lot of drug addicts, people that have drug problems, that stems off and leads to a whole host of other issues that people have. So a lot of her children were put into foster care. Some were adopted, some weren't adopted. Some of the kids grew up with her. Um,
mm,
so she did lose quite a bit of her kids. She did keep some of her kids. So yeah, but she had her own host of troubles. Again, if you probably would have asked me this question a couple years ago, my answer would have been completely different. But being a parent myself, started as a young parent, um, I I understand. There's some. It's easy to get in some tough situations, and it's easy to judge people on the outside.
come on.
Wow, this person did this and they did that and they did this. But you know what? We all have our own struggles. We all have our own battles. And I'm very thankful that I was put into foster care. I'm very thankful because if not, I would not be. There's no way I would be living the life that I'm living now. There's a very good chance I probably would have ended up dead or in jail. Very, very high likelihood.
I have that same type of testimony. My adoption was closed, and I did find my maternal side. And when I realized what I was born into and what it could have been, I don't believe I'd be the person that I am today. And I have even gone as far to say, I don't know if I would have survived it.
Yeah,
I might not even be here.
I can
So I
totally relate.
totally get that. Wow. So you're a parent yourself,
Yeah.
and tell me what adoption, like, what does that mean to you? Do you agree with adoption? Do you agree with the foster system? What does that
So
look
I
like?
would say this. So I 100% agree with adoption. I'm all for adoption. Shout out to any, foster parents who might be watching this. Um, Man, I give my heart goes out to anybody who's willing to open up their home to someone who's not, their own seed, their own biological child. I think it takes a special individual to be able to do that. Now, with that said, not every foster parent is the best foster parent. There's
Mm,
definitely some not so good seeds out there. I don't know how it is here in Florida, but I know in Michigan and up north, you get paid quite a bit to have kids and to be a foster parent. So,
okay.
unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get into it for the wrong reasons. I have seen that side of it as well. But there's a lot of very, very good foster parents. So I definitely agree with the adoption system. I'm grateful for it. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am if not. And then the latter part of your question, what was the other part? I'm sorry.
I was asking, how do you feel about, and I think you answered it, the foster system and adoption. And I asked the question because there are some adoptees, even though they are adoptees, they're like, this is no good. The
Mhm.
system is flawed. You're tearing adoptees away from their birth family. You should find a way to keep them in the family, a kinship adoption, if you will. And so I was just curious of what your view is on that. I personally don't know that I I don't agree with that. I just feel like do what's best for the child. And if that means the child has to be placed with another family, because let me ask you this. There are people that believe adoptees, every single adoptee experiences trauma because we were taken away from our birth mothers so early on, our birth families. Do you feel like you've experienced adoption trauma?
No, I would say I don't agree with that. I would say I would have had way more trauma if I would have stayed put and been where I was. So I think everything comes with its set of challenges. It
Right.
is different. I think in an ideal situation, the perfect home is a married couple, father, mother, boom. I think that's my ideal of a perfect home. But I think a lot of people, even people that weren't adopted, quite frankly, they don't come from perfect homes. They don't come from perfect scenarios. So in most cases that I've seen, and again, I've been around the foster system a long time. My sister is a foster parent, and
Oh,
family
okay.
members are foster parents. So again, the majority of the people that I've seen that want to adopt, they have very good intentions. They have huge hearts, and it's a better situation. Now, of course, and again, I can't speak on how it really is in Florida because that's not where I was in foster care. But I know in Michigan, first of all, it is very hard to lose your kids. Like you really have to be messing up pretty
Okay.
bad. And if you do mess up, you can get your kids back. I mean, like you really got to be messing up pretty bad. And
Okay.
then they always do go to, um, you know, family members. That's the first people they reach out to. But again, opening your home up to a child that is not yours, that you're financially responsible, that you're, not a lot of people are willing to take on that role, even if it is family members. And even sometimes family members might not be best suited for that position. But I think, yeah, if you could go with a family member, I think that's great. But unfortunately, a lot of times that's not the best option. And
Right.
quite frankly, in my situation, that would not have been a good option.
So, because you said that you were around your grandmother a lot, so I'm just curious, do you know why you didn't go to your grandmother as opposed to ending up with your family?
I don't know exactly. I never had that conversation. I was really young at the time. I will say this, looking back, because I don't remember much of that. But
Okay.
looking back at it, my grandma she was older.
Okay.
So I don't think, and again, this is just me making an assumption. That's hard putting a young, well, an infant. And again, at that time when I was born a drug and alcohol addicted baby. So I spent the first year of my life in the hospital, which the doctors told my parents that it would be one of two scenarios. Number one, I wouldn't make it past my 1 year old birthday, or number two, if I did, I would be slow. I couldn't perform as a regular adult. Like I'd be special. I don't
Wow.
know the correct term. I don't want to use the
Yeah,
wrong terminology, but
I don't
yeah.
either, but I'm following you. I'm following you. That okay, so your mother was really heavy. She was using even while she was pregnant.
Oh yeah,
Because
she was on crack when she was pregnant.
oh, okay. So okay, so that's why a lot of your siblings probably have the same story
Correct.
being okay. Wow. So being born like that, what has life been for you having that kind of start? Were you any of those
Honestly,
things or did you like whatever the stat said like I was none of those things?
no, I've been absolutely none of those things. Never had any learning disabilities. Never had. So physically, I've always been um, an athlete. I've always been top of my class. I went to school on a full ride football scholarship. I always got good grades. So as far as that, no, those were never an issue. So it did a couple things for me. So number one, it let me know, only thing a doctor can do is give their best educated um, uh, input, right? It's not facts. Just because a doctor says something, that doesn't mean it's facts. What's later on in life, that's played out significantly. Um, just knowing that, like I really don't care what a doctor says because the doctor's not God. So it's played out great, and I've always loved it. I've always loved being the underdog. Almost in everything I've ever done in life, I've always been the
Mm,
underdog. I've always been the one who, no one bets on Tywin. But over the years, I've kind of took that and just flipped it. So I've always used that. I never minded being the underdog, and I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like it.
that's incredible. Do you know in the line of 13, do you know what number? Where do you
Now,
feel like
I'm like in the middle somewhere, but to be honest, I don't know because so when I turned, it was sometimes when I was in my teens, when I decided like, okay, I'd like to get to know my brothers and sisters.
okay.
I met with one of my sisters, which she was awesome. She's great. Talk to her to this
That
day.
was my
But then
okay.
once I got to kind of digging in and learning some stuff, I was like, why am I doing this? It was like I got a family
Mm,
that loves me. I'm surrounded by people that love and care for me. I'm like, do I really? What am I going down this route for? And honestly, I kind of stopped. For me, I was like, I'm not really interested in that. And I do talk to some of my siblings, but it just was it. It was kind of I'm like, I understand we're blood, but I don't know. I just was like, nah, not really for me.
I hear you on that because I have an older cousin on my biological side that I've met when I found my family. And she, because she's older, she remembered when my birth mother was pregnant with me and when she had, like, she remembered, she knew I existed. Now, if you came after that, you didn't know because, family didn't
Yeah,
talk about it, it was done.
yeah, for sure.
So when I came back, and while they were so glad that I came back up, and she has said that very thing to me, like, why dig? Like, I do know my maternal, like, I know the story and I
Hmm.
know everything that she's gone through. But she was like, why are you digging? And I'm like, I don't know. But there's something inside of me that wants to know. And I don't know if it's just because I'm just a very inquisitive person just by nature, because I still don't know anything about my birth father. I know his name and I know how old he was when I was born, but that's it. And so I did stop because I found my birth family in 2012. Now I haven't pursued that other side. And it's interesting you say that because it's like you and I had the same story. We were adopted by great families. We had great lives. Like we're good.
Yeah,
What am I doing? I don't know.
yeah.
I don't I don't know what that is. It's
I
interesting that
think
you're
it's
like, I'm good. I can stop now. I don't know that
yeah,
I'm there yet. I still have questions.
yeah. No, and I think that's important. I think it's important because, and I think this is anyone honestly on this journey that we call life. Um, Well, with me, until I found God, I'll be honest, I felt like I was missing something.
Mm.
Honestly, until I found God, I was there. I was,
Say it
and I
again.
was,
Say it
I
again for
was.
the people in the back.
Yes. Until I had God in my life, I was missing something. So
Mm.
naturally, when you feel like that, you're looking around every corner, every crevice, through every door, trying to figure out like what is it that I'm missing. And I just truly believe without that connection with God, without that relationship to God, someone will always feel like that. So for me, it was just kind of one of those doors that I needed to open, look in, and I was like, okay, what I'm looking for, it's not in here. And I just shut the door and started looking at other places.
Wow.
Um, so I would really say that's what it was for me. And I would say, I have no ill will towards my biological mom.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't, no ill will whatsoever. Now, I couldn't always say that. There was a point in my life, I wouldn't say ill will. I just didn't really understand. I'm like, well, why would you do it? I didn't think too much about it, but at the same time, I didn't understand it. Now, I'm grateful that she went the route that she did have, because she could have aborted me. She could have made other decisions. Like, I didn't have to come into this world. So I'm very grateful she did give birth and she did have me and she did make that decision, whether she made it or not. I was conceived, and because of that, I'm here. So I'm super grateful for her. I wish I would, because she's no longer around. So I wish at this point I could reach out to her and just tell her, like, look, I'm not angry at you. I'm not upset with you, and I
Mm.
understand, and I'm good, and I hope you're good too, because but she's no longer here, so I never got a chance to have that conversation, but that relationship, I'm cool. Like, I'm so cool. I'm super grateful. Super
Okay.
grateful.
Okay. I was going to ask you if she's still here. Okay, you answered that for me. I did have an opportunity to do that. Well, my birth mother is still here. My grandmother is not. She died in 2019. And I had an opportunity to tell them that because, like you, I never felt any type of way about it. I don't know why, and I really can't explain it, and maybe because my life was good.
Yeah.
So I never felt like, what am I missing? Like, if I'm not there, I never felt like that. And when I found them, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I was missing. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Totally.
I'm
Yes.
good. And
Yes.
thank you for making the decisions that you made. And um, I do have a relationship with my brothers, and I thank God for that. It is very different with my mother. And with my mother, it's different because when we speak about adoption trauma, she's the one that had the trauma.
Yeah.
And I can tell very much so that
Yeah.
she never got help.
Yeah.
She will shut down in a minute if I
Yeah.
start poking too much. And I've not done that in a while, but she'll
Yeah.
shut down. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, this is what's happening here. But
I think
back
as
to what,
we,
go ahead.
I think as we become adults and we get a little wisdom under our belt, a little time served, it's easier putting yourself. At least for me, it was easier putting myself in the other person's shoes.
Mm,
Because at one point I didn't. I was only looking at the picture from my perspective, which there's a whole nother perspective, and that's her perspective and what
yeah,
she had going on in her life and what she was dealing with, and I don't know what she was currently dealing with how she was raised, and what, I don't know that. I don't know, and it's not my job to judge. That's not my job. It's just not my job. So I would rather love her for the decisions that she made.
right.
Um, but yeah.
And I totally appreciate that that part of the story because, like you said, she could have aborted me because I was baby number two.
Mm,
And so, it could have been like, well, no, we're not doing this. And
yeah.
so, um, and I don't know why I'm curious about this question for myself.
Mhm.
I wonder if she knew that she was going to have to give me up because she was only 15, because it was my
Oh,
grandmother's
wow.
decision. She was young. Or did she get to the hospital and that bombshell was dropped on her? Like, oh no, you're not
Mm,
keeping. I don't know the answer to that. And at this
wow.
point, I don't know that I would ask her. My grandmother is gone. I wonder how that scenario played out because that can. either way, I'm sure giving up a baby is hard. You and I are both parents, so imagine what that would have felt like had we had to do that. But to get to the hospital and be like, all right, this is what's happening. The level of trauma.
Wow. That's totally different. So I've been around the foster system, like adoption, like I've been around all of this for pretty much my whole life, but I've never heard a story like that. So everybody that I know that's been adopted that was in foster care, it was because their parents were not being good parents.
Mm,
It wasn't because someone was
a
having
kid.
a child, yeah, and they made a decision. Okay, I'm not at a good place. Let me put this child in a good home. Or it was nothing like that. These are kids that were taken from their homes. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I know.
No, that's not my story. And to our listeners, you
Uh,
can go back and check out episodes 1 through 4, and you can hear my whole story. That wasn't my
wow.
story. She was
Okay.
young.
Okay. See, that's even. I've never heard that. I've
And that's
never
why
heard
I have questions. That's why I
that.
have more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, mine wasn't cut and dry. You're a bad parent. Something was going on, and the state's like, nope. Yeah, that's not my story.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
And
I've heard of that. I mean, I know those kind of, stories exist, but, when I say I've been around, the foster care system a lot, because even, after I was adopted, my parents, they were still foster parents. So I've had, like, my mom had hundreds of
okay,
kids.
okay.
So,
Are they
yeah.
still fostering to this day, or have they stopped at this
N-
point?
no, so both my parents they're passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no worries. So they're passed away, but my sister, she was a foster parent. She actually ended up adopting as well.
Okay.
So yeah, so I've literally seen like
I do
hundreds
have
of kids
such an
being brought up.
appreciation for parents like yours,
Hmm.
mine, that, like you said, open up their homes because you don't have to. And then they were good to us. Like it
Yeah,
was like we were theirs, but it's like we were theirs. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, and it was wild. So growing up, sometimes a kid would come midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock
Wow.
in the morning. Kid get dropped off. Sometimes they're with us 24 hours. Sometimes they're with us a month, sometimes 6 months, so it's all different time frames.
And
That's
that
why
was
I
just,
say,
I'm sorry, go
that's
ahead.
why I say it's very hard to get your kids taken from you in a perspective of you're doing something wrong, because you kind of get a slapped on the wrist and then you get your kids back, right? Got to take this course and you get your kids back.
That has to
Let you
be
cool down a
interesting.
little bit, get your kids back. Yeah.
That has to be interesting for from a perspective of a for like you. That was your house.
Hmm.
This is where I'm home. But to have the kids in and out, did you? What was that like? Because I
Oh,
can't. I
it
don't
was
know.
so dope. It was so dope. It was like a never ending, like new kids coming in, is like new friends, and it's like, okay, tell me your story. And I'm like, ooh, that happened to you. Like, oh man, this happened to me. So it was so cool. And it was all different races, all different ages, all different sexes.
Wow.
So I was like, I just developed this love for people and this interest in people very
Mm.
early on because of being exposed to so many different kids. It was super dope. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And unfortunately, that's the stereotype that you hear is these kids that come in with all these problems and they're this and they're that. And I don't think I've ever heard any your perspective. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever heard anybody say, "Oh, it was dope. All these kids coming through here
Yeah.
all the time." Do you still keep in touch with any of them? Did you form relationships?
No, because I was
Oh, okay.
young. I was
All
so I
right.
was so young by the time they stopped. I was very young.
Okay.
Um, but it was dope. I absolutely loved it. And it is true. Like some kids, you know, it tends to what I've seen. The older the child, typically, the more, I don't like the word trauma, so I'm not going to use that, baggage that someone would come with, the more troubles that a kid had or they dealt with, just because life happened to them very, very quick. They were exposed to stuff very, very early. So you would have young kids coming and the stuff they were seeing and the stuff that they were exposed to and the stuff that they had to deal with, no child should have to deal with.
Right.
So I don't believe kids aren't born. They're not born bad. These are learned behaviors. So depending
Absolutely.
on what they've been exposed to, depending on who they've been around, yeah, they definitely come. That they got the wrong program downloaded. And someone that's why you need loving people that can be patient and understand under all of this. There's a phenomenal, wonderful, amazing human being that has the potential to grow up and do something amazing in the world. But it takes patience, it takes love, it takes nurturing. And I'm very grateful I had that in my parents, and I also had that in my siblings. Big shout out to all my siblings. I'm so grateful for them. And then also the community and that my family put me in. And a lot of that had to do with sports.
Okay. Now, were your siblings adopted as well, or are they biological to your parents?
So my parents had three biological kids, and
Okay.
then they had, well, counting me, four adopted kids.
Wow, big family.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
big family. Now, I
yeah.
want to just go back because you said that your mom had to fight, or your parents had to fight to adopt you. How old were you, or do you know? I'm sure you know. How old were you when that was finalized after everything they had to go through?
I want to say I was a couple years old,
Oh, okay. So
two,
you were
three
still
years, two, three
little.
years old. Yeah, two, three
You were
years
still
old. But
little.
I was in the home the whole time.
Right, right.
But
But
it
she
was
just
it
had
was a
to,
couple years.
a
Yeah,
lot of red tape to make that
yeah, yeah.
permanent. Got you.
Which is wild thinking about it.
Yeah. What was she fighting? Was she fighting the state wanting to put you back in the home, or
No, no, it's just Caucasians couldn't adopt
just that
blacks.
was plain and simple?
Yeah,
They just can't adopt no matter
yeah,
what's. Oh,
yeah. And again, I don't know if that was verbalized in that way. It could have been. That's how it was explained to me.
yeah.
Um, so
I'm
they could
sure it
have been
wasn't.
saying other things, but
Right.
the underlying
The
issue was that
undertone.
I honestly, yeah, I don't know. I never asked.
Okay.
Um, they
That's
never even
wild.
honestly thought about it.
That's wild. I'm
Yeah,
sure in my brain it was not said. It was the undertone, and your parents were wise enough to know what was going
yeah.
on and fought against that. That's wild. And so, as we're wrapping up here, now Tywin is all grown up, has a family of his own. Tell me who you are today.
Oh man. First, I would say God fearing. Um, I would say second would be a husband to a beautiful, 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 amazing bride.
Well, come on and brag about her.
And yeah, she's so amazing. And God hooked me up. Okay, man, God hooked me up.
I love it.
Dude, he hit me with the alley oop on that one. And then father, entrepreneur, businessman. So yeah, in pretty much in that order. Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I have four with one on the way, so it'll be five.
Oh, you got,
Yeah.
well, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
That's
I'm excited.
that's amazing. Well, I appreciate this. Wow. That's why I love just having conversations,
Absolutely,
because you helped me today and you don't even know it. You said some things that you was dropping some nuggets. I don't even think you realize it. And I appreciate that.
absolutely. It's
So,
beautiful. It's been a great conversation, and it's always good. This is one of those subjects. It's not talked about a lot. So even
now,
when I seen you were starting your podcast, I'm like, man, this is so dope because there's really so many people that need this. Because again, I feel I was I know I was very fortunate. The way I grew up, how everything went, it was smooth. It really overall, it was a smooth process. But not everybody's story is like that.
not at all.
Um,
And I'm learning
it,
that more and more of these conversations as I'm beginning to have them. Man, we were blessed.
yeah, not everybody has that story, and I would probably say to anybody that maybe watches this and is in a tough spot or trying to figure things out, or I don't know, maybe your outlook on everything isn't the best. I would probably say first of all, like just deep dive into yourself. Like deep dive into being the best version of who you can be, because it's you're not gonna find who you are in the world. You're not gonna find who you are in siblings. So just look inward and then look up. Look inward
Mm,
and look up. Look to God, and He'll heal anything. I don't care what's going on in your life, what kind of trauma you done dealt with, or you think you dealt with. Um, God can cover all that. That's easy for Him.
easy,
Easy.
easy, because he does all things well,
Hmm.
all things.
Easy
Well,
work.
let the people know how to find you, your business. Go ahead and shout out your information.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anybody that maybe looking for a little bit of inspiration, maybe a little bit of motivation, you can find me on all social media platforms at Tywin Kalendijk. That's just TywinKalandYk. Nice Polish last name for you. So yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Tywin. Thank you so much, family, for joining us today. As I said in the beginning, if you're watching on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. On Amazon or Spotify, make sure you follow us. And until next week, bye, family.
see you.